Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. Joining myself today, Kelly, is Peter and Beth. In per normal, we were ruminating about life and catching up with each other because that's what we do. We came up with the conversation of perception versus reality. And we all do this on an individual level as well as a team level. And it's hard to navigate the two sometimes, think about going and buying a new shirt or like with my daughter, and I'm like, wow, that looks gorgeous on you. And then I get the teenage eye roll and she's like, it's hideous on me. And so what is perception versus reality, right? And that's the same here. And so one of the things I was talking about beforehand is two of my clients have decided that they're ready to retire and they don't want to go through the sales process for whatever reason. I did not ask them, but this working in today's reality is more than they want to do anymore. They're just done. They just want to go and do whatever they consider is fun for them and just put the chapter of owning a veterinary hospital behind them. It's one small, small hospital, solo doctors who are like, yeah, I did my time. Um, so what is the perception? What is the reality there? And for them, it's different than maybe people looking at them going, well, why are you closing? You do such a great job. You're amazing with the animals. And they're like, yeah, I'm done. So, Beth and Peter, you had some kind of examples as well for that. Mhm.
Yeah, so I definitely can understand that as being like a practice owner, like sometimes like it, the numbers behind running a successful practice are very complicated and there are very, very many, many layers to it. So you can look like you have this like wildly successful practice that is like just scraping by and breaking even because your expenses are so high.
Right.
And I think that plays into every aspect of really life, but even like practice ownership and veterinary medicine, like there is this difference between like what you actually need, what the facts are, and what the perception of the situation can be. So we were talking a little bit just sort of in this theme, and I was saying like there's sometimes like I find it very interesting, like we can have a day where like say a couple people call out, so we are definitely understaffed, but the team all like rallies together and pitches in and helps one another. And the day goes really smoothly and everybody feels great. And then we can have another day where, like, maybe we're kind of overstaffed and we have extra people and everyone is stressed and running around and we don't have enough staff, we're understaffed. And it's just very interesting to me, like, how there can be times where, like, due to whatever factors played into that, like, the perception is that we're understaffed when we're actually overstaffed. And then like vice versa. Like I think some of it has to do with mindset, some of it has to do with what are the things that walk through the door on that particular day. There's like so many aspects to it, but it makes it challenging, like circling back to the business side of it, like to keep your team feeling supported and like there's enough of them without having overstaffing issues while, making sure that there's not too many people to sustain the financial side of the business. That becomes like one layer that can be really challenging.
Hmm. It's a
Wow.
balance.
There was
Yeah, and perception too. Yep.
lot just vomited there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot.
so success is in the eyes of the beholder.
Hmm.
Some measure success with a objective number, and some measure success with a subjective feel. So as a consultant, I always had to balance the two of them. Because if I went to Beth and said, "How are things going?" and she said, "Things are going great," and I said, "How are you making that assessment?" I have a happy team, I have happy clients, and there's a dollar in the bank at the end of the month. Or I can say, "Beth, that's all well and good, but that dollar in the bank at the end of the month is not going to cover payroll, which is the next day." And so data, which is complicated,
Hmm.
does help give some guidance and directions, but it shouldn't be used as a hammer as much as a roadmap. And so when we work with practices, our teams need to understand that there are costs of doing business. In fact, the concept of an ownership mentality in the paraprofessional, the non-veterinary staff, and even the veterinary staff in many veterinary hospitals is missing. If if we could put everybody on our team in an ownership role, they might have a better understanding of the three key expenses: doctor's salary, staff salary, and cost of goods,
Hmm.
and recognize that when they waste a syringe or when they waste a catheter or when they drop pills on the ground, that costs the ownership from that standpoint. They may look at success in a different way. So it is really an interesting perception. As you noted, we always seem to be able to get more done with fewer people and a happier environment than when we're overstaffed or perceived to be overstaffed. Um, and if you have this conversation, here's an interesting question to ask your staff anonymously at the end of the day if you had an online survey. Were we successful in our in achieving our vision and mission today? And if yes, wonderful. If no, why not?
Hmm.
And so I think when it comes to success, I would always go back to your vision and mission and your values and see if you're living up to them. And when there are comments about too many people or people not doing their job, or whatever the case may be, some of that may be disrespectful in some ways, which is a violation. So I think this concept of perception versus reality, when you're a manager and you're not in the trenches, you don't always get a feeling of the pulse of the practice. But when you're in the treatment area, and you hear what's going on and see what's going on, you can get a good reality check. It's tough to do a telehealth of your own practice from an office. You
Hmm.
really need the pulse by managing, by wandering about. So I think this whole concept of perception versus reality is the reality in veterinary medicine. It's an ongoing perception versus reality.
Also, I have a question. David's coming to join us, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah, just let
nice.
him in. So, is the question too about perception versus reality, looking at the numbers versus people like Beth using you as an example, because that was just there. How much does fear and self-driven needs play into the concept? So I don't have the answer. I have the question because I don't work in your practice, right? But the question being is, if I perceive that we're overstaffed, am I fearful that Beth's going to lay some people off? So then do I say, no, we're not overstaffed because I want to secure my job placement?
Hmm. That's an interesting take on it. I mean, I definitely think I could see that playing a role. I could see people being afraid. I have a couple of team members who are very insecure and are comfortable with me so that like anytime we do a policy change or talk about changing staff hours, they'll like come to me privately and be like, "Am I getting fired?" And I'm always like, "Why would you jump to that? This has nothing to do with you." And if you were at the point of me almost firing you, like you would know well in advance, you would have had many conversations that would have been documented. Like I wouldn't just randomly be like, "Today's the day." But I do feel like there are people that is more in the forefront of their mind as an employee than like maybe it would be in mine. That maybe that does play into some of their behavior of like a job security sort of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
If they have that worry, Beth, then there's a whole nother psychological safety environment discussion that we need to have as
Yeah.
well.
Well, it's like one specific person who's that way,
I
but
don't think when I was in practice, I don't think we had a lot of staff members worried about being fired. Um, I think they were worried about having hours cut.
Mhm.
and that being making it uncomfortable from that standpoint. But we are so freaking myopic in a practice setting that we only see the 8 hours that we worked that day. We don't remember the day before when we were running around like chickens without a head. And we don't look at the appointment book for the next day that indicates that we've got 16 surgeries and 110% appointment book fill. We are so narrow focused that we can only look at what's immediately in front of our faces from that standpoint. And so when we look at perception versus reality, reality is this is how we feel right now. Perception, this is how we feel right now. But the reality is, if we take this as a marathon and not a sprint, you'll be just fine. It's pacing yourself and getting through the day and saying, you know what, we'll be better tomorrow. That helps to say, you know what, our data we may have had a bad day, but we're not having a bad week, and we're not
Right.
having a bad month, and we're not having a bad year, which is why we have to measure data to manage expectations. And so I always shared, we needed to do X amount every day in terms of cash flow just to pay the bills. And so the target every day was to meet that number. And your staff should know what that number is.
Mhm.
And if you have a couple of days in a row that you don't meet that number, then you might need to have a meeting with your marketing team and look at it from a bigger picture standpoint. But we get so hung up on what's right in front of us that we forget the last 10 days we were so freaking busy. And today is actually a relief day. It's a pressure release day. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I agree with that because I do feel like I see that all the time with my entire team, from the doctors to the CSRs to the nurses. Like, and in talking about it from the other angle, like if we have one day that's like crazy, that we're so busy and there's like three procedures going on at once and everyone's stressed out and everybody's lunch break was super short because we all had so much going on, that they're like, we need more staff. And I'm like, okay, but if we look back over the last like 2 weeks, this is the only day where we felt that drowny. So like you can't, like we can't make business decisions of what staff we actually need on an average day-to-day basis based upon the worst day, whether the worst day is the busiest or the least busy. Like I feel like you have to use that sort of law of averages, but I do find that sometimes they'll get themselves really wound up about like one busy day where like the entire rest of the month was very manageable. And it's hard to like manage that perception thing of like them being like, well, we don't have enough team members and we're too busy, when like you try to point out, okay, but look at all this other data. And it's like, if that's not what's right in front of their face, it's just out the window. They forget immediately.
Which is why it is so important to have people like Kelly and a marketing team, because marketing is what keeps your momentum. I would say marketing, and if clients are red blood cells, then marketing is kind of like the arteries and the veins that moves it through the body, because it keeps them moving through your practice. And what happens in many practices, and Kelly can weigh in on this, I'm sure, in great detail, is we do reactive marketing because we were slow instead of ongoing engagement, which allows us to have a nice rate and rhythm of heart rate and push our clients through our veins and arteries to our heart and our brain, which keep us moving. So, Kelly,
Yeah, true. And we see it both ways. Oh, we're doing really well, so we'll stop marketing.
Mhm.
But they were doing really well because they've been doing marketing, right? And so they think, well, then we don't need marketing anymore. And then they turn off the marketing faucet. And in 3 months, their phone isn't ringing as much. And then they're like panic because they're like, oh my God, we're flailing, we're failing, we need marketing today. Whereas if they had just kept it going, one of the questions we kind of ask here too is, how's your client load? Too many, too little? Like, you're constantly adjusting to find that sweet spot so it's manageable for the people in the hospital, in the exam room. So, you don't have a line of cars out in the parking lot, but you're also not playing, pickleball in the parking lot either because it's empty, right? It's like it's that give and take, and life changes all the time, which I think people forget too. right? Summer, we have summer vacations, you know, then we may have people, sickness just run through the entire building. Starts with one person and then everybody shares the love. Well, that changes the dynamic in the day, right? Um, Another thing too that hospitals forget about and don't look at with their marketing to keep an even keel is your lapsing client rate. What is your lapsing client rate? Is it going up? Is it going down? Why are those people not coming back? How do we get those people to stay in the hospital for consistency? Because they're people who already have used your services. So theoretically, they are admirers of your services. We're just going to assume that. There's some who are not a good fit. We all know that. But in the majority, they should be good. So then the team has an even perception, the clients have an even perception, and your marketing should also match. Your marketing is your digital lobby, so what clients perceive on you should online should match what they experience in person, right? So there's another perception versus reality situation. You don't want your marketing to not match what you do in the practice because then people won't come back. They just won't have a trust factor. So, Beth, I know you do good marketing, so I know that's not an issue with you. That's a thing that you actually put a lot of thought to, and make sure that happens. But other practices, not so much. It's a give or take sort of situation, and that isn't a great way to do your marketing.
Yeah. And the comment you made about the client expectations versus reality, which fits very nicely into the perception versus reality thing, is like a whole nother layer to perception versus reality. This topic is a very broad topic because it can really apply to any aspect of veterinary practice and life. But that's so true too, because I have absolutely seen that, whether it was with another veterinary practice or, even other businesses where like they have this online presence that makes them look, one type of way that someone then might, that really speaks to them. Like, say your online presence is that you're this very clinical, clean, straight line, serious practice. And then they get there and your team is completely different. Your hospital does not look like that. You used all stock photos. And then it's like a completely wildly different experience, which then that person is going to be very put off if that's like not what they were looking for and not what they want. I think that plays into business success and that layer too, with like looking at client interactions.
Right? How you spin the narrative. It's interesting because you guys know my daughter's in college right now and studying marketing, and she's in a video class, and we always chat. So I'm like, well, what did you learn today? She goes, Mom, it was fascinating. So the teacher showed us one 30-second promotional clip of a movie, and it made it look like a rom-com, the movie, and thinking, oh, this is what I want to go look at. And then some guys in the room were like, that's not this movie. And the teacher's like, just wait, just wait. And so then she showed another promotional clip that actually did match the movie, and it was all about murder and horror.
Oh,
And but how the narrative was spun, how the perception was created, which marketing is all about creating the perception, made people think differently. Like the teacher was obviously doing a 180-degree examination to show black and white, like how you can, it was extreme examples to get the point across. But that same goes for your marketing. And then I'm going to even add even more, Beth, to what you were saying is many, many times we recreate marketing. We drive people through the front door. And the very first experience they get is the front desk staff. And that is where the car skids to a complete stop because the marketing team, I mean, the marketing team and the front staff team in the office, and everybody's not connecting on the narrative. So one perception is online, one perception's in person at the front desk, then another perception happens in the exam room,
mhm.
and all three are different.
Yeah,
Marketing drives people in, your team drives them away.
yeah.
Mhm.
Not unusual. It's interesting. You both talked about clients, but what about new hires? Because we always
Mm.
seem to put on our best behavior, especially when you're hiring a doctor, to try to sell the perception of our practice. And what I teach the veterinary students is that they need to be in a hospital for at least 2 days because you can only be good for 2 days before making a decision. So we have to think about our new hires as well when we're talking about perception and reality too. So it's really interesting. But if we look at it going back to the data discussion and trying to help our staffs understand, a slow day is actually a good day. It's a good day for training. It's a good day to work on operational efficiency. It's a good day to talk about some of the things that you could be doing better to help with the client experience. Because very often when we're going around with our hair on fire, we don't have a chance to actually see how things are, and our perception is insane. Our reality is we could be doing better because our efficiency levels aren't where they need to be. And
Hmm.
so I really think that every once in a while, a slow day, even a day chosen to be slow, is not a bad day to reflect back on the reality and match it to the perception. So ask your staff at the end of the day, was this a green day, a yellow day, or a red day? And I had a practice that did this. And they would rank income, number of clients, new clients that are on their dashboard. The staff had a ranking. We had a ranking as well that was financial. And if you had a financial ranking where all your KPIs were above for the day, that would be green. But frequently that was a red staff day. And so if you can get a green staff day and a green KPI benchmark dashboard day, those are the days to celebrate. Yellow is not unusual because different people have different feelings. But I think you, at the end of every day, sometimes you have to turn to your people and say, all right, we survived. What do you think? How did we do?
Hmm.
10, almost what we would call an employer promoter score. Would you recommend your friends and family come work here after today? And that's a reality check, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I feel like
So,
it is a very challenging balance to have a green level day across the board because those days where you're really knocking it out of the park financially are often the days that feel really heavy to the team because there were add-on emergency surgeries or add-on emergency appointments or the appointment schedule was like really, really booked. There was a lot of heavy stuff. Even if you layer in the whole psychological part of it. Like sometimes then they're dealing with really sick animals that adds more stress and frustration or sadness if they're putting those animals to sleep or there's a surgery that doesn't go well. Like that's a whole nother layer to it. Like you might have had the most wildly successful financial day, but like at what emotional cost to the team, right? Like trying to balance that need to help your hospital be financially successful and help all the clients that you can help, and they might all be green, but then your team is like, we're red, we're red, and we're unwell because it was like a really heavy day for them, let
well,
alone busy.
and you could have a red technician day because everything in the back died, and a green receptionist day because it wasn't a heavy appointment book fill,
Right,
but all the clients were nice and they didn't get to see the death in the back. And so it's a very interesting balancing act, and especially since in many ways how siloed our practices are, for everybody truly to wrap their arms and come up with a consensus feeling for how a day is. The perception in many cases does not match the reality.
right.
And sick animals make more money.
Mhm,
But if you had a day that was all wellness, you might be bored. You
mhm,
might be understaffed. And so it is an interesting discussion that we've been having about perception and reality. But the reality is we need to measure data so we can manage expectations, so we can manage our team, and so that we could learn where we need to improve so that on the crazy days, we can get through them green.
mhm.
And on the slow days, we can get through them green as well.
So is managing data is that perceived as being very painful?
Yes, Beth.
Painful to me personally?
Well, I mean, you personally, or just as a team, like I know personally in my company, I'm the visionary. I'm the one who comes up with the ideas. I'm the creative person, right?
Mhm.
But on the flip side means doing details is akin to fingers on a chalkboard for me.
Mm,
I have to slow down. I have to really focus. Doesn't mean I can't do them. I just don't like doing them. It's very, very painful. So knowing that about myself, I have a person who does that for
yeah,
me. Like,
yeah,
and that person and people like think doing details all day long, they are just in heaven. Like
yeah,
more spreadsheets, the better, more columns, more formulas. And I'm like, yeah, no, tell me, like, what's the result, right? Like, I don't want to know
yeah,
in between. So I find doing data painful, but I balance that with somebody who does, because data is important and we need it. And I need
yeah,
to know that information, right? So
yes,
the perceived is, do some people find doing data painful? I'll own that one. Then do you just drop the ball and not look at it because you find it's painful? Or do you do like I did and say, well, I need to find somebody else then who loves data and we balance each other out, right?
yeah. I would say I am a little bit of a data nerd, so I enjoy a good spreadsheet. I have made quite a few of my own to track some of our KPIs and stuff that I want to keep an eye on as far as practice health. My life has gotten exponentially better since I outsourced the data entry. Like, I do enjoy the building of the spreadsheets and being the person to decide these are the things we're going to focus on, and then we need the data to be able to tell if our marketing is successful or what we're doing in the practice is successful with the team. But having someone else be the actual data entry person freed up a lot of my time because that was absolutely not something I needed to be doing. So then I can lean more into how can I use this data. So like I'm a bit of both because I find a lot of value in that because I like facts. I think facts are a lot easier to make business decisions upon. And if you have data and numbers, then that helps you to remove some of the emotional part of it that can sometimes muddy the waters,
Mm.
to get closer to reality and kind of make perception a little easier to see through to where the reality is. I think data helps with that quite a bit. So I'm a fan. I like spreadsheets. I like a good spreadsheet.
Well, it depends on how many threads there are, because I love those, 1,000 thread spreadsheets, but that's a whole nother bad joke. That's
They
a
can
bad
get
joke.
really, really intense.
Yeah. Um, I would suggest that to manage it, you have to measure it. I mean, Peter Drucker, but you don't want to use it as a hammer. And so it really is a question of sharing the data, doing some open book management, letting the staff know that, payroll is a little bit out of whack, which means we have to be more effective in the way we take care of our clients, or we got to watch what we're ordering because there's really only the three buckets that are there. If your doctors are being paid on production, then you have a discussion with them on production basis. If you have doctors that are being paid on a flat salary, you have those discussions with them. Beth, you're going into winter. It's going to snow. It's going to
Mhm.
slow down.
Mhm.
Kelly, you're going into winter. It's going to snow. It's going to slow down a little differently from your standpoint. In California, it's going to drizzle. It'll slow down. But we have to look at it as a marathon and not a sprint. We are so focused on this, and this is why I use Groundhog's Day as a metaphor for veterinary medicine, the movie. We're just trying to survive from day to day. And those practices that actually have a vision and a direction and can steer their car into the future are in a much better position than those that live in a reactionary world. Reality is you're going to have some good days and some bad days. And as long as the good days are higher in number than the bad days, you got a great practice. Period. Mic drop.
And we can end there,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, there's nothing like a good mic drop with a period for the
Agreed.
ending of a podcast, right? So thank you for listening today. You can follow us on all the social media channels, including like YouTube, TikTok. We have plenty of shorts and takeaways from these, so please come follow us on there. Please subscribe to the podcast because we come out with a new podcast every week. So we're on a popular podcast platform near you. So we'd love for you to subscribe and join us. And until later, we will wish you adieu with the royal wave. Thank you for joining us today.